This is a Brass Check TV news bulletin, and it's an example of why Brass Check deserves your support. Did you know that just yesterday, China and the U.S. made a huge genetic modified crop deal hidden in the trade talks? I'm going to guarantee you didn't, because it is really buried and nobody right, left, or center is talking about it. But basically, China has been, like most countries, has been reluctant to allow U.S. genetically modified crops into its country. In case you didn't know, the U.S. is absolutely head and shoulders the #1 developer of genetically modified crops. Nobody else is really in the game compared to the United States. And most countries are really not happy about it. The U.S. is the world's biggest producer of genetically modified crops. And China, interestingly enough, is the biggest importer of genetically modified crops, soybeans in particular, and also canola oil. By the way, if anybody's ever told you that canola oil is safe and healthy, they're either ignorant or they're lying to you. So that's just a sidebar. And of course, genetically modified plant material is something that human beings and livestock should not be eating. And there's ample evidence from scientific testing that multi-generations of animals fed on genetically modified crops degenerate and become ill. Very well hidden, very well covered up. But here's the story that's brand new, which is, we've had this big supposed trade war, and the deal is really simple. Hey, China, if you'll let us import our poisonous GMO crops, we'll let you export your contaminated food products to us. And that is basically the deal. So this came out of Reuters. China approved 5 genetically modified GM crops for import on Tuesday, the first in 18 months, in a move that could boost overseas grain purchases and ease pressure from the United States to open its markets to more Chinese farm goods. The U.S. is the world's biggest producer of GM crops, while China is the top importer of GM soybeans and canola. U.S. farmers and global seed companies. All U.S. farmers? I doubt it, but they're presenting U.S. farmers as a single block. U.S. farmers, we really should say corporate U.S. farmers and corporate global seed companies, have long complained about Beijing's slow and unpredictable process for approving GM crops for import, stoking trade tensions between the world's 2 largest economies. Let's remember that the very first order that was put down when the U.S. illegally and immorally invaded Iraq under George Bush Jr. was to remove all restrictions on GMO crops. Previous to that, the Iraqi government was not really interested in U.S. genetically modified crops. We dropped some bombs on them, put some boots on the ground, and next thing you know, that law was abolished and the GM crops were flowing into Iraq, seeds and crops. So let's read that again. U.S. farmers, corporate farmers, and global seed companies have long complained about Beijing's slow and unpredictable process. There is a website that you should check out only because it is pure propaganda. It's got a great name, it's got a great face. I mean, it's a really good scam. It's called geneticliteracyproject.org. Doesn't that sound nice? It's an org. It's an organization, and it's all about literacy, and it's going to teach the unwashed masses what they don't know about genetics. Here's some of the headlines from the geneticliteracyproject.org, which I'm sure we'll find is owned by Monsanto. Chinese embrace fake news on GMOs. How do you like that? Those ignorant Chinese. They don't know anything. They're backwards. They're slow. And boy, they're embracing all the fake news out there on GMOs, and that comes courtesy of the Genetic Literacy Project. The Chinese embrace fake news on GMOs, with many believing they are U.S. bioterrorism weapons. Pretty sensational. Numerous public opinion surveys have shown that Chinese people have a sharply negative attitudes toward genetically modified foods, despite the worldwide scientific consensus that they are as safe as any other. There's a worldwide scientific consensus? Really? We know that that's not true. We know that Monsanto has suppressed scientific research to the point of personally attacking and destroying the careers of any scientist that demonstrates the dangers of these foods. They're not just smeared, they're driven out of their professions. And because universities are so craven and corrupt, it's really not that hard to do anymore. So this goes on and on to talk about, the superstitious Chinese and how ignorant they are. Well, Chinese people are a little more aware and concerned and sensible about food. They're not really interested in starving. They know what starvation is. They know what it means when your ability to produce your own food has been taken over by an outer force, an outside force. It just goes on. You really got to go to the site, this Genetic Literacy Project site. It is such bullshit. Let's see. Hey, they got some transparency here. Let's click on their transparency. Oh, they even ask for donations. Oh, God. Yeah, because Monsanto doesn't have enough money, and it's really hard to package and market biological toxic waste. And they've got all about their governance, and this is probably a list. Oh, here we go. Here's the people that have given money. The John Templeton Foundation, big donor. The Cyril Freedom Trust. Oh, boy, that sounds good, doesn't it? We want a more just and prosperous society, and my God, we don't want any kind of litigation, and we don't want any kind of regulation, and we want a just society just for large corporations. And this organization is based in New Wales, Pennsylvania. Yeah. And then they get some money from another fake group called the Center for Food Integrity. Oh, this is wonderful. Their tagline is, helping today's food system earn consumer trust. Now, let me ask you something. If you go to a farmer and you see his apple trees, and you see the apples in the basket, and you know that he personally is out in those fields every day. He doesn't have slaves working in them. Do you really need a whole lot of education on trusting that farmer? Right? The only people that need to be educated on how to trust food projects are people who are selling, who are being sold crap to. So anyway, so the money just flows around from one foundation to another. And there's a lot of, oh boy, can you imagine this group, this Genetic Literacy Project, which is so wonderful, has managed to raise over $7 million from the public. Love to see the names of the people on that list and how that was managed. Anyway, scam. But going back to the other scam is, so basically we've got two governments, the United States government and the Chinese government, and they've made a deal. We'll take your crap if you'll take our crap. And the only group not included in the equation are the people of China and the people of the United States. And let's look at these products, these great genetically modified products that China is opening its doors to. One is called the Dow. It's manufactured by Dow DuPont. Now, these are companies that clearly have your best interest in mind, right? Everybody knows that you can count on Dow and you can count on DuPont. And anyway, they've come up with some corn They've come up with some soybean, and another company, Bayer. We know Bayer. They're so trustworthy. And they've come up with some soybeans, and then a little project between Bayer and Monsanto, two companies that we just love and trust, and they're practically like Santa Claus. They've come up with some glyphosate tolerant canola. Now, glyphosate is a disaster biologically to human beings, but you're consuming a lot of it thanks to your good friends at Monsanto. So anyway, this is a story that completely missed by all sides, left, right, up, down, news media, and you're hearing it straight from the horse's mouth at Brass Check in a timely way that you can actually know what's going on.